Now, no matter what field you're in, no matter what field of endeavor, no matter what work, no matter what activity, there is one thing that all successful people have in common, is that they are good time managers. And the reason they are good time managers is because they recognize that time management is life management. It is personal management. I have never seen an example in the hundreds, thousands of biographies and autobiographies I've studied of successful men and women where the individual has not been well organized and efficient and valued and used their times well. Successful people, winners, use their time well. Losers do not. And in the next 55 minutes, I am going to give you 21 of the very finest time management ideas ever developed. If you use these ideas systematically, you can increase your personal productivity by 2 or 3 hours a day. You can increase your income. You can increase your life satisfaction. You can even increase the length of time you live. The question is, how badly do you want to learn how to manage your time well? How much effort are you willing to put into it? Because the key to time management is self-discipline. Time management is self-discipline in action, and self-discipline is the key to success. The first idea in excellent time management is analysis. Make a list. In fact, it's been discovered that if you make a list before you begin any task or job, you will immediately improve your productivity by 25%. How do you make a list? Well, you make your list for the week the Sunday or the Saturday before. And you make your list for each day the evening before. And you always work from a list. Now, why do you make it the evening before? The primary reason is if you make a list the evening before, the subconscious goes to work on your list while you're asleep. And during the night, the subconscious will solve problems and bring insights to you. You'll wake up in the morning with insights, ideas, intuitions, answers that will make your day more productive. Now, the second reason that you use a list is because if you don't have a list, it's like driving down the street in a car with no steering wheel. You just drift, and every bump, every interruption, everything that happens sets you off in a different direction. A list gives you a track to run on for the entire day. Another reason that you use a list is because with a list, you can analyze where you are. You can tell what is more important and what is less important. You can tell what is irrelevant, what can be delegated, what can be delayed, what can be put off. The most important reason for using a list, though, however, is this, is that when you use a list and you work down the list and you check things off, each time you check something off on a list, it gives you a feeling of accomplishment. And a successful life is based on a series of successful days. And a series of successful days is based on working on a list, one step at a time. Point number 2,
use the ABCDE method. Many people have told me that this method changed their lives, doubled their income, transformed their productivity, so I have to give it to you. A is a must-do. This is something that has serious consequences if you don't do it. Your boss is going to be mad. Your customer is going to be really unhappy. There's serious consequences if you don't do it. So it's something you must do. This is a top priority in your daily work list. A second are things that you should do. Return a phone call, check your email. It's something that has mild consequences whether you do it or not. A C activity is something that's nice to do, which is go down the hall, talk to a friend, phone somebody, see what's for sale at the store, read the paper. It's nice to do, but it has no consequences at all. So the rule is never do a B when there's an A left undone. Never do a C when there's a B left undone. And if you follow that very simple ABC method, you'll find that most of your C activities will just die away because they're completely irrelevant to your life. What's the great problem? People flip it over and they spend all day long doing C activities. Things that are fun, easy, law of least resistance, comfort zone, and so on. Now D is something that you delegate. And delegate means you delegate everything possible, everything that you possibly can to free up time for the few things that only you can do that will really make a difference in your life. And finally, E, eliminate all non-essential uses of time.
Now the third point,
I call it the law of 3. Now, the law of 3 is one of the great breakthrough concepts. It says that there are only 3 things that you do in work that account for 90% of your value. Only 3. And the way you find those 3, what you do is you make a list of everything that you do in the course of a week or a month. You'll find that you do probably 10 or 20 things, and you write them all down. And then you go over the list and you ask this magic question. And the magic question is if you could only do one thing all day long, which one activity contributes the greatest value to your work, the greatest value to yourself, the greatest value to your life? What is the one activity? Now, you'll know that because it'll pop off the page. You'll say, oh, if I could do this all day long, this would contribute the most value. So you put a circle around it. The second thing you do is you then say, if I could only do 2 things all day long, which would be number 2? And you put a circle around that. And number 3 may take a little bit more thought, but if I could only do 3 things all day long, what would they be? And then you take those and you put them on a separate piece of paper. And then as you look at that, you'll see that if I just did these 3 things all day long, I would contribute more value to my company than everything else I do. Because everything else is in the 10%. Now, if you don't know what these 3 things are, you're in great danger of wasting your career. You'll end up just wasting time, shooting the breeze, and so on. If you know what these 3 things are, here is the great rule, and it's not even written down here. And the rule is this, is do fewer things, but do more important things, and do them more often, and get better at them.
So the key to success is always be asking this question: what is the most valuable use of my time right now? I'm convinced that if all you did was organize your life and only work on the most valuable use of your time, that alone would be enough to make you an effective, efficient person. That alone would be enough to increase your productivity, your performance, your profitability, your rewards by 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50%. So always before you begin, ask yourself, is this the most important thing I could be doing? Is this my top priority task? Does this give me the highest payoff? Is this the most valuable use of my time? It's one of the key ways to keep on track with regard to priorities. Okay, now the 4th principle for effective time management is
write it down. We've seen how important writing is to goal setting, but instead of focusing on the future, you're now going to be writing about the present, just as you experience it every day. You're going to describe what you actually do with your time, and you're going to keep a written record of the places you actually go. In other words, you're going to keep a diary of your activities, and you're going to be amazed by the distractions, detours, and downright wastes of time that you come up with during the course of a day. All of these get in the way of achieving your goals. For many people, it's almost like they planned it that way, and maybe at some unconscious level, they did. The great thing about keeping a time diary is that it brings all this out in the open. It forces you to see what you're actually doing and what you're not doing. The time diary doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just buy a little spiral notebook that you can easily carry in your pocket. When you go to lunch, when you drive across town, when you go to the dry cleaners, make a quick note of the time you began the activity and the time it ended. Try to make this notation as soon as possible, but if it's inconvenient to do it immediately, you can do it later. But you should make an entry in your time diary at least once every 30 minutes. And you should keep this up for at least a week. What else do you have to do to gain the benefits of this extremely powerful productivity technique? Nothing. You don't have to do anything else at all. It's just a process for making yourself aware of how you actually spend your time. You will naturally and effortlessly begin to reorganize your life. Perhaps that seems like too much to believe, but it's true. When you're forced to write down the fact that you hung out at the coffee machine for 15 minutes today, you'll think twice about doing that again tomorrow. When you've got to put it in writing that you worked on an important project for 30 minutes today and then took a break to read the newspaper, you'll persevere a little longer on the project tomorrow and forget about the newspaper. Just try keeping a time diary for 1 week, and you'll see how it can revolutionize your ability to focus and achieve your goals. Very easy to understand, but these are powerful and effective productivity techniques.
the 5th key idea in time management, which I am a fanatic on, is concentration. concentration. Many people come to me in my seminars and they say, well, I never learned how to concentrate. I can't concentrate. How do I learn to concentrate? Learning how to concentrate is absolutely essential to success. As a matter of fact, it is impossible for you to accomplish anything worthwhile in life without the ability to concentrate single-mindedly on one thing at a time and stay with it until it's complete. In fact, time and motion studies have shown that if you start a task and you put it down and you come back to it and pick it up and start it and put it down and come back to it and pick it up, that it will take you as much as 500% of the necessary time to do a task than if you picked it up and carried it through. Alec McKenzie, great time management expert, Alec McKenzie calls this single handling. Once you have made a list of what you have to do, organized your goals, determine the highest and most valuable priority, then pick the most important thing and begin working on it and stay with it until it's finished. Now people say, well, if I stay with this task until it's finished, I won't get anything else done. That doesn't matter. If it's the most valuable thing that you have to do, it's the most important thing that you could be working on. Now it's a wonderful thing. When you concentrate and work intensely on an important task, it gives you a feeling of energy and enthusiasm. When you complete an important task, your self-esteem goes up. You feel like a winner. You feel great about yourself. But if you work away on low priority tasks, even if you complete them and do them well, you don't get any bang for the buck. So concentrate single-mindedly on one task at a time. Do first things first and do things one at a time. The sixth key to time management
is the word no. If it is not the highest and best use of your time, refuse to do it. Somebody says, hi, you've got a minute to chat? No, not right now. I've got to get back to work. Why don't you go down the hall and talk with him and ruin his career? All right? In other words, just say no at work when people want to do things. You'll find that most people who are going nowhere with their lives want company. And the greatest time waster in work is other people wasting your time. And sometimes they're very nice and they're conversational and they're charming and they're fun to talk to, which is the greatest danger of all, because the law of least resistance says, well, sure, we'll have a little chat and talk and go for lunch and shoot the breeze because they're such a nice person. And oh my God, the morning's gone. And you haven't done anything. And pretty soon you get into a habit of coming to work and finding the nicest person and wasting your time with idle chit-chat. So the rule is, there's nothing wrong with idle chit-chat, but as Drucker says, if you spend more than 10% of your time in social interaction at work, then you are out of control of your time. You are malorganized, and you're going to get a chance to explore new careers very soon. So say no. Say, I'd love to talk to you now. Let's talk after work. Let's talk at lunch. Sometimes I will ask my audiences, I'll say, how much do you get if you work at McDonald's? Everybody knows you get what? Minimum wage. Now, if you went to work for McDonald's, compare this to the way you work today. If you went to work for McDonald's and you went to work there, do you think you could kind of stroll in half an hour after starting time with your Starbucks cup and sit down, chat, and read the paper and do a little email and phone home? And do you think you could do that at McDonald's at minimum wage? No. If you worked at McDonald's at minimum wage and your starting time was 8:30, if you were there at 8:31, all hell is going to break loose. They know that they cannot allow anybody to violate the starting times, or everybody does. You punch in, and what do you do then? When do you go to work? You go to work when? Immediately. Imagine you trying to work the way you work at McDonald's. Can you imagine that? You'll be fired so fast. If you work the way you work during the day, you'd be fired so fast from a McDonald's. My point is, you have to put it on yourself. My friend Zig says, if you will be hard on yourself, life will be easy on you. But if you insist upon being easy on yourself, life is going to be very hard on you. Which means is, say no to anything that is not a good use of your time.
The next principle, number 7, is deadlines. Deadlines and rewards. Now, psychologists have discovered that 85% of the reason that you or I do anything is because of what we expect to happen as a result. We call this consequences or logical consequences. 15% is because of what we've been told, but 85% is the consequences that we expect. So therefore, what you do is when you have an important task, the way that you motivate yourself to do the task is you structure a specific reward that you're going to get when it's finished. Let me give you an example. Sometimes people are very uneasy about making telephone calls, especially salespeople, so they put it off and they procrastinate. What we encourage them to do is give themselves a reward every time they make a phone call. Put a cup of coffee next to the phone. Every time you make a phone call, give yourself a sip of coffee. Take a cookie and break it up. Give yourself a piece of cookie. In other words, train yourself to have a positive consequence for everything that you do. So set deadlines. How do you set deadlines? First of all, when you set the goal, when you specify the task, set the deadline when it's going to be accomplished. Always set the deadline with lots of room to spare, and always try to finish before the deadline. Tell other people that you're going to finish by this deadline. Promise others that you'll have your work done. It's a powerful way to act as what is called a forcing system. A forcing system is something that motivates you to stay at it. Because if you don't set a deadline and give yourself a forcing system, you fall into the trap of what is called Parkinson's law. Now, Parkinson's law says that work expands to fill the time allotted for it. That if you have 2 hours of work to do and 8 hours of time, you will stretch that work over 8 hours. Parkinson's law also says that work contracts to fill the time allotted for it. If you have 8 hours of work to do, and because of an emergency you have to have it done in 2 hours, you will get it done in 2 hours. Highly effective people are always setting tight, stringent, disciplined deadlines on themselves so they get more work done in a short period of time rather than less work done in a long period of time. Does this make sense? Very, very important. Okay, the next principle is neatness. It's an interesting thing because you run into people all the time. I run into people in my office who say, it's okay if my desk is messy, I know where everything is. Now you have to understand one thing, is intelligent people, people with good memories, can very often remember where everything is. But it just means that they are using their intelligence to combat the inefficiency of neatness. Every single study that has been done says this, that if you will just clean up your work environment so it is completely neat and everything is off of your desk or your workplace except the one thing you're working on, that will increase your productivity by 20 to 40%. People have a difficult time understanding this, but I have tested it. I've worked with a messy desk, I've worked with a clean desk, and I tell you, I promise you, you will be astonished at the difference it makes. Now, how do you clean it up? Well, it's very simple. There's a very simple way of cleaning off a desk. It's called the TRAF system. The TRAF system has 4 letters. T stands for toss. Remember that in time management, your wastebasket is your best friend. So toss it out, throw it away. R stands for refer, which means it's not relevant to you, so you refer it to somebody else. A stands for action. And what you do is you take a file folder and you put it into an action folder, so it's out of the way. And F stands for file. File it away, do something with it. But before you file, always ask this question, what would happen if I didn't have this document? What would happen if I never could find this again? And if it's not particularly serious, throw that away too. Once you've done that, TRAF, you've tossed it, referred it, filed it, or put it in an action file. Once you've done that, then you start with your action file and you work through it. Neatness is important. Clean your desk, clean your workplace. Even in the kitchen, you'll find that if you take one thing out and use it and put it away, and take another thing out, you'll get far more done in a short period of time. Now, here's the rule. If you're not using it, put it away. If you're not using it, put it away. Even if you have to take the stuff off your desk and your credenza and put it on the floor, do it. Your briefcase is your workplace if you are on the road, if you're a salesperson, if you're moving around. Make sure your briefcase is neat and orderly and has everything that you need and nothing more than you need. Neatness is critical to productivity. Here's a final point. In a study that was done recently, 98% of senior executives said they would not promote a messy person, that they would not give a messy person greater responsibilities, that if you are messy, no matter how much you kid yourself, everybody around you concludes that you are inefficient, undependable, unreliable, and incompetent, and even if you do the job well, they think it's just an accident. So be neat. Stand back from your desk and look at it and say, what kind of a person would work at a desk like this? Stand back and look at your car. Say, what kind of a person drives a car like this? Look at your workplace, your briefcase. Look at your home and say, what kind of a person lives here or works here? And you'll find that what will come to you is messy, inefficient, incompetent, disorganized, and so on. Neatness is critical to time management. Number 9.
It's a thing called consequences, and we talked about this before. This is one of the most important words I learned in my study of time management. is that something is valuable to the degree to which it has serious potential consequences. Something is unimportant to the degree to which it has low or no potential consequences. So one of the thinking tools that you have to have is look at everything that you do and ask yourself, does this have big potential consequences or not? And you'll find that most people spend most of the time working on things that have low or no consequences. At Harvard University, there was a great professor. He's dead now, but I began to study him in the 60s. And his name was Dr. Edward Banfield. And Banfield did 50 years of research into how it is that some people move up. In the course of their working lifetime, they move up, and they move up financially, and they eventually earn a lot of money. And the great majority of people don't. They just very seldom improve themselves. But what he found was that the thinking characteristic of these people was long-time perspective. They were long-term thinkers. They were thinking today of the consequences of their behaviors in terms of where they wanted to be in the future. For example, your coming to this meeting means that you are a long-term thinker. You are willing to invest time and energy to learn things that can help you in the years ahead. So you'll find that top people are long-term thinkers. They're always thinking, how can I learn and do things today that will have big consequences in the future? Average people are short-term thinkers. They only think about entertainment today, having fun today, enjoyment today, going home and watching television today. So you are the long-term thinkers. You are the ones who are willing to do the work and make the sacrifices today in order to have a much better life for yourself and your family in the future, which means that you're in sort of the elite, what we call the top 10% of our society, is because you think long-term. One of the keys to time management is to do things that have long-term ramifications. Learning a new skill, even though it's very difficult at the beginning, can give you something you can use all your life. You can use it and get better and better all your life, and it compounds in its value. It becomes more and more valuable over time.
Okay, the next principle, number 10, is batching tasks. It's interesting that there is what is called in the world of work a learning curve. A learning curve says this. It says when you do a job the first time, it takes you the most amount of time to do it because you're learning how. The second time it takes less. The third time it takes less. The fourth time it takes less. In fact, the learning curve theory says that you can decrease the amount of time by as much as 80% if you do the same job over and over again over a period of time. So batching your tasks is a major time management tool. What does it mean? It means that if you're going to make phone calls, make all your phone calls at once. Have your calls held, make them all at once. If you're going to do invoices, do all the invoices at once. If you're going to do correspondence, do all the correspondence at once. If you're going to read and catch up, read everything at once. It's been found that if you do this on a regular basis, you'll get so much more done by doing it and concentrating on batches of tasks than if you did not. So batch your tasks whenever you possibly can. Imagine what most people do is they do a little bit of telephone call, a little bit of correspondence, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they have no learning curve at all. Each one takes the maximum amount of time. So batch your tasks. Put groups of tasks together at once and do them at once. Number 11, develop a sense of urgency. A sense of urgency is a quality that is possessed by only 2% of the population. 2% of the population do things fast. 2% of the population have a bias for action. In Tom Peters' wonderful book, In Search of Excellence, he says that all the excellent companies have a bias for action. And all of the companies that do not classify or do not come into the excellence category do things when they get around to it. You call them up and you have a problem or a complaint. You hear from them 3 or 4 weeks later. But the excellent companies, you call up with a problem or a complaint, and bang, there's somebody back to you in 2 minutes. If you ever want an experience, call IBM, call Hewlett-Packard, and say, I'm having a problem getting some information. I'm having a problem with my PC. They won't let you off the phone until they've taken care of you. You call the other companies, they'll say, it's not my job. They say, the guy who takes care of that isn't here. When will he be back? I don't know. Can you take a message? I don't have a pencil. You know, you've spoken to those people? And then they can't understand why they're struggling. You know that 20% of the companies make 80% of the profits in every industry? Interestingly enough. So develop a sense of urgency. Get the reputation as the person who does things fast. Develop a reputation for speed and dependability, and your future will just open up in front of you. Imagine if you owned a company and you had two people in the company, and both of them were reasonably well talented, both of them were doing reasonably well, except one person had a sense of urgency and did things fast. And every time you give them something to do, they took it and they ran with it like a ball player catching a fumble and running for the goal line. The other person got to it after lunch, or maybe next Monday, or no rush, week's almost over, Thursday afternoon, and so on. Which one would you give additional responsibility to? Which one would you promote? Which one would you spend money training? Which one would you send to places where you needed help? It's always the person with a sense of urgency. I can tell you this, that the sense of urgency for me has been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. As a consultant, I have been able to save my clients sometimes millions of dollars by acting fast when they've given me a project to take care of. Whereas if I had acted even a day later, it could have cost a fortune. And if you'll develop that habit of working fast, that sense of urgency, act now, do it now, do it now, do it now. In selling especially. Somebody calls you up and has a question, get back to them now. Somebody has a problem, get back to them now. Somebody needs something, move on it quickly. If you have to forego coffee breaks or lunch or something else, move fast. If you develop that reputation for speed, it will be worth a fortune to you. Takes a little while, but it's a habit. Most people just sort of shuffle through life. You know, they get to it when they feel like it. But all the excellent people, all the high performers have a sense of urgency. Okay, the next principle, delegate. Delegate everything that you possibly can. Now, what does delegation mean? Delegation is very simple. What it means is this, is that whatever your hourly rate is, let us say your goal is to earn $50,000 a year. If you work 8 hours a day, that's $25 an hour. You got that? So you're a $25 an hour person. Now, the only way you can make $25 an hour is if you do $25 or more work. And the only way you can do $25 an hour or more work is if you take anything that can be done by anybody who earns less than you per hour, 20, 15, 10, 5, and so on, and delegate, outsource, have somebody else do it. The most valuable resource in the world today is productive time. And do not waste your productive time dropping off laundry, getting your car washed, mowing your lawn, cleaning your house. Do not waste your productive time doing things that you can hire people to do for $5 or $10 an hour. Use your productive time on tasks that are more expensive, of higher value. Delegate everything that you possibly can. In fact, its general conclusion is this, is that if you cannot delegate, if you cannot get other people to do things of lower priority for you, you cannot grow, you cannot develop, you cannot be successful. Delegation requires one key word, clarity. So when you delegate, here are the keys. First of all, think through what you want done. Write it down. Second of all, pick the right person to do it. Don't give a major task to an incapable person. Third of all, make it crystal clear what you want done and when you want it done. And fourth of all, check, review, inspect, keep on top of it to make sure it is done on time. Never assume that anything will be done on time. I read something years ago, a great sign that said that assumption lies at the root of all foul-ups. Never assume that anybody or anything will be done on time unless you check on it yourself. The next one, number 13, called work simplification. Do you know that at the turn of the century in the United States, it took 50% of the American population ways to streamline existing processes? Now here's a couple of other ideas which have been very useful to me in terms of getting more done in a short period of time. Here are the 6, maybe 7 key ideas. If you want to get more done in a given period of time, or if you want to get more done, period, you can do 1, you can work longer. In other words, you can spend more hours working. But that's not a great idea because your productivity starts to drop off and you start to make mistakes, which you have to come back and correct and so on. Number 2 is you can work faster. You can get more done within a short period of time. Number 3 is you can do fewer things but do more important things, do higher payoff tasks in the same period of time to increase your productivity. Number 4 is you can do things that you are better at. One of the qualities of leaders is that leaders, exceptional people, are always concentrating their time on doing what they do best. So ask yourself, what is it that I'm the best at? What is it that I do the easiest? You can sometimes dramatically increase your productivity simply by concentrating on where you're good. Another thing that you can do is make fewer mistakes. You know, there's an old saying that there's never enough time to do it right, but there's always enough time to do it over. If you make fewer mistakes, you will get far more done within a certain time, within that time period. And the last thing, which many people miss, is do things together. Teamwork. Putting a group of people together to work on a complex project can sometimes get the project done in 2 hours, whereas it would take another individual 8 or 9 or 10 hours. So do things together. Work as teams with other people. Those are the keys. But work simplification means always finding faster, easier, newer, quicker, cheaper, more efficient ways to do what you're doing.
So the final point that I want to make, as Peter Drucker said, you cannot manage time, you can only manage yourself. And time management is really personal management. When I began to study time management, I thought it was a peripheral subject, sort of like bowling or some activity that you do on the side, skiing that you do occasionally. And then I realized that time management was not a planet that revolved around the sun of my life. The time management was the planet of my life, and everything else in my life was a planet that revolved around it. Once I made that switch and realized that the use of my time determined the entire quality of my life, the entire quality of my life changed. I was talking to a time management expert with the Covey organization some years ago, and he told me something I never forgot, and I want to pass it on to you. And he said, you know what time management is? Time management is the ability to control the sequence of events. To decide what you do first, what you do second, what you do third, and what you do not at all. All of life management, all of time management, all the quality of your life and all your happiness and health and wealth and everything that happens to you will be determined by the sequence of events that you choose. You choose what to do first, get up at 5:30 and exercise, or sleep in, get up at the last minute, drink a cup of coffee, eat a muffin, and rush off to work listening to Rush Limbaugh. You know, which of those two do you think is going to have the most positive effect on your life? So choosing the sequence. What do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do not at all? I'll give you a very simple example. When you come home at night, don't turn on the television. Speak to the people who are there. Communicate. Talk to them. Rebuild relationships. What do most people do? Men especially, turn on the television. As soon as you turn on the television, all family communication stops. It's all over. And sit there and watch television because you may be physically present, but you're mentally and emotionally absent. These are all things that you can learn, and when you learn these things, the quality of your life explodes. And the wonderful thing is you feel wonderful about yourself, and your self-esteem goes up, your confidence goes up, your sense of personal power goes up when you're a productive person.